Steam is a platform that allows us to have a central hub for all of our favorite games, and while not every MMO has a functional Steam port, quite a few do, making it easy for many of us to manage our time and what we play. But there are hundreds of MMOs, 501 on Steam with the MMO tag as of recording this video. I didn't even know there were over 500 MMOs still online, to be honest. Today, I'm gonna help you out by manually combing through all 501 games and selecting only the best MMOs currently available on Steam to perhaps aid you in narrowing down what to play, because navigating through this convoluted mess that is Steam's MMO category is a headache-inducing chore. So let's jump right in. New World is a buy-to-play open-world MMO featuring a real-time action combat system allowing players to play alone or with a small team, unless you're interested in larger-scale group content, in which case you can amass armies for both PvE and PvP battles. New World caters to all demographics of players. Players can wield swords, magic, and guns, has an extensive gathering and crafting system, territories to claim and defend, and has seen an uptick in activity and popularity recently. Its system requirements aren't really horrible, but definitely require a decent computer to play well. Black Desert Online is a buy-to-play open-world MMO featuring a full true-action combat system, rewarding solo play, as there isn't really a whole lot of group content present in-game like dungeons or raids. You can team up for open-world content, but a lot of the game will be spent either engaging enemies in PvE and PvP or life-skilling, both of which are entirely valid ways of playing the game. It is by far the best action MMO on the market and offers the most beautiful graphical style, which is why the system requirements are a little bit higher than some of its competition. Have you heard of the critically acclaimed MMORPG Final Fantasy XIV with an extended free trial, which you can play through the entirety of A Realm Reborn and the award-winning Stormblood expansion up to level 70 for free with no restrictions on playtime? Because if you haven't, well, you have now. Final Fantasy XIV is a pay-to-play open-world MMORPG with segregated zones featuring a tabbed target combat system, extensive narrative that really makes you feel like you're playing a JRPG, and some of the best, most rewarding PvE content in the entire genre, not so much PvP. Its system requirements are honestly pretty decent for interested players. Now, before we discuss any additional MMOs, allow me to thank our incredible patrons over on Patreon. Your guys' support is why I can continue to make videos like this every single month, and I deeply appreciate you all being there for me. Guild Wars 2 is essentially Final Fantasy XIV, but with action combat and a Western graphical style. It's a free-to-play open-world segregated MMO. It has an extensive narrative, very rewarding PvE, exploration specifically, and quite a good PvP system. Expansions are all buy-to-play, allowing you to play the entirety of Guild Wars 2 completely free, but requiring you to purchase the expansions for any additional content. Its system requirements are admittedly not too much different from Final Fantasy XIV. Vindictus is a free-to-play hub MMO offering no world to explore, but numerous different instance stages to engage in with varying difficulty levels. It features what is arguably some of the best action combat in the MMO genre, perhaps second to Black Desert Online, although Vindictus players will never admit to that, some fantastic character models, and fairly uninspired stages for the most part, at least in terms of variety. It's also impossible to ever have this game optimized, regardless of the system requirements listed. The Elder Scrolls Online is essentially Guild Wars 2, but set in the Elder Scrolls universe. You'll probably recognize some familiar faces like Sheogorath, or some familiar regions like Morrowind or Skyrim. It's a beautiful buy-to-play MMO with admittedly some slower action combat that the Elder Scrolls games are traditionally known for. It has a pretty compelling narrative, lots to see and explore, a large focus on PvP, both small and large scale. Its system requirements are also not bad. Star Wars: The Old Republic is a free-to-play MMO set in many large open worlds. It's Star Wars after all, it'd be weird to be set in a single planet. In featuring numerous planets, it opens the opportunity for some truly unique zones to explore. Honestly, I've always had an issue with the slow tab target combat, but its engaging narrative, its segregated world, and compelling voice acting really make this a game that you should not miss. And its system requirements mean that you don't really require anything too powerful to run it. Lost Ark is a free-to-play top-down isometric MMO with a very fast, very flashy action combat system. It's the only MMO in this list with an isometric perspective and is also one of the few MMOs that both feel very single player and multiplayer friendly. It features segregated zones, a pretty fun story, a very large emphasis on sailing and exploration. Don't even get me started on the Makoko seeds, man. I have nightmares about those to this day. Interestingly enough, even despite how good this game looks and plays, it doesn't have very high system requirements. EverQuest is a free-to-play open-world MMO. It's one of the OG MMORPGs that helped define and shape the genre, continuing to retain an active player base decades later. It features hundreds of zones, dozens of unique races and classes, 29 expansions, the ability to hire and control mercenaries, and lots of group content. Given the fact that it released back in 1834, you wouldn't expect it to really have very high system requirements. EverQuest II is the arguably less popular sequel to EverQuest. Much like its predecessor, it features a large open world to explore, 19 total expansions, hundreds of different areas to explore, a housing system with thousands of items to decorate, which admittedly a lot of MMOs listed here also feature, but this is an MMO that is 2 decades old, so you gotta give him credit somewhere, right? It also doesn't have very high system requirements. I'm including both RuneScape and old school RuneScape in a single category. I always do this when I include RuneScape in any top 10 video or any top list, because they're the same game, just completely different, which, you know, I know makes no sense. They're tab target, they're large open world MMOs with a strong focus on exploration and non-combat activities. Very few MMOs reward players for freely doing what they want. RuneScape is one such game, and it's partly responsible for its continued success. At least with old school RuneScape, which is much more popular than its non-old school version. Its system requirements are also evidently pretty low. MapleStory is a free-to-play horizontal side-scrolling MMO, one of maybe 3 games total of this specific kind. It features a large world, completely segregated with hundreds of small zones to explore on both an X and Y axis, full action combat with abilities that obscure the entire screen at times, making for some unreal chaotic fun, and a very lighthearted, humor-based narrative. It's also pretty forgiving in terms of system requirements. PSO2 New Genesis is arguably the best looking anime MMO on the market right now. Not only are the characters and the world absolutely gorgeous, but it features some fast, flashy action combat. Since it's a JMMO, it also has a lot of story, and at times feels like a sci-fi JRPG. It is a segregated world, splitting zones by small loading screens, but zones are enormous. Larger, I feel, at times than other games like Guild Wars 2 or even Final Fantasy XIV. It requires a bit of a better PC to play, however, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. Albon Online is a free-to-play open-world MMO with a very large emphasis on PvPvE gameplay and life skilling, where most MMOs are about moving from Hub A to Hub B, telling you to go kill 3 boars, 4 chickens, or loot 5 herbs from their garden out the front of their house. Progressing in a very linear fashion, Albon Online promotes freedom to explore and play how you want, having taken a lot of inspiration from RuneScape, actually. It features a type of tab target combat, has an enormous world with massive scale PvP battles, a lot of PvE content outside of dungeons and raids, and is actually completely cross-platform compatible, which is interesting, as the game was built for PC, released on PC, and then several years later released a mobile port. Due to this, you can bet its system requirements are not very high. Tower of Fantasy is a free-to-play open-world hybrid action combat MMO gacha game. The only gacha game in this list, actually. You essentially spend real money to obtain in-game currency. You roll for RNG characters that act as weapons that you can equip and utilize in combat. The world is large and completely free to explore. The narrative is absolutely horrible, but the number of things to do, see, and engage in largely makes up for the lack of any real connection to characters or the world that you're playing in. Due to cross-platform compatibility, the game is pretty low in terms of system requirements for either PC or mobile. There are other MMOs that are available on Steam that are worth playing to some people. Secret World Legends, Neverwinter, Wayfinder, Wizard 101, but these are the MMOs that I think truly stand out on Steam that should at least go ways to satiate the thirst that you have for something to play. So, why not go ahead and try one? Otherwise, here are 2 videos on screen right now that might be of more interest to you.